So we're going to look at very new areas of digital technology today, and we're going to start with what I think is the hardest and most important area of maritime IT, which is connecting the ship and shore digitally, with talks from G2 Ocean and Ukkulen Shipping. In the second and third session, we're going to go into two other tricky areas. We're going to look at cybersecurity and environmental data with G2 Ocean and Enkeri in the second session. And the third session, we're going to look at advances in AI for navigation with Orca. So getting on to the first session. So we're going to hear from Kristin Helen Andersen, who's the Vice President IT with G2 Ocean, and Leif Gunnar Alvar, who's a Digitalisation Manager with Ukkulen Shipping. They're going to have two presentations, about 15 minutes each, and there should be plenty of time for questions afterwards. And you can load your questions in the question and answer box at any time. They're both based in Bergen, and they're both going to talk about a fairly similar topic, which is the data integration between the fleet and the shore. So perhaps it's going to be more of an overview talk from Kristin and more of a technical dive with Leif, but we'll see. I think we all know what the challenges are. You want to get accurate data. You want to make sure people can see it. As a ship owner, you want to keep control of the data. You don't want vendors controlling it or charging you more money for data which is yours. You want to make good use of the cloud. If you're going to use an intermediary company, you want the right system to do it. You might want to use standards instead or as well, but it's still quite hard working out what works and what doesn't work. G2 Ocean is a joint venture of two of the world's largest open hatch ship owning companies. That's Gearbulk and Grieg Maritime. And Kristin Helen Andersen is Vice President IT in Unity, which is a joint IT department established between G2 Ocean, Gearbulk and Grieg Star. So Kristin has been working in shipping since 2018, and before that on digital strategy and projects in business sectors from consulting and transportation. She's a former business lead with PricewaterhouseCoopers in Bergen and a former assistant professor at NTNU in Trondheim, teaching about the use of ICT in education. So I'd like to invite Kristin to give the opening talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, and good morning from stormy and rainy Bergen. I will start to share my presentation, so please just let me know if we have issues and it can't be seen.
That's fine.
Oh, good, then I'll go. Okay, I'll keep it a bit high level as mentioned already. I'll call it the short title, From IT Project to Change Programs Through Harmonized Infrastructure and Data Sharing. So I will run through this as quickly as I can. So Carl already introduced G2 Ocean, which is the commercial operation of our shipping, and it's a joint venture between Gearbulk and the Grieg Maritime Group. And we have our main offices here in Bergen, but we of course operate globally. So G2 Ocean was joint from our owners back in 2017. And then the next step one was to actually look into the IT services due to the digitalization journey. So my department was actually created 3 years ago, early 2019, where we looked into uniting the IT services across our three companies. When we did that, we also needed to start to consider what kind of services is it important for a modern IT department to actually provide today, in being able to include both the customer side, the business side, all our employees at the shore side, but also including the vessels and the needs of our owners. So entering into this, we had very different organizations or different organization cultures and a lot of different application and infrastructure. So the main thing we have been doing for these 3 years is actually about harmonization. So this is why we call it unified, is to actually harmonize wherever we can to gain control in our environment and actually being able to bring in the necessary speed for the companies to move forward with modernization. So shortly, these are the three services that we are providing within my IT department today. We have the cloud services, which is the infrastructure side, where we actually are now moving away from all the legacy infrastructure, taking us up to the cloud, and I will speak a little bit more about that. So we will be able to actually give our users at sea and shore secure and easy access to all the applications and solutions that want to be used. Within the cloud services, we also have a support service. So we are supporting 65 vessels that's shared between Gearbulk and Grieg Star. And we have approximately 490 employees that we are supporting on the shore side. Second department is analytics, BI and development. So that of course is about the data sharing. It's also about connecting all the data we have on the shore side together with the sea side to be as efficient as we can while we work. So we are trying to transform all this information that we already have and being able to provide it in an easier way and have it secured in our environments. So that's the second department, where we also have development and developers sitting within, helping with applications or different needs that our businesses may need. The third one is cybersecurity, of course, to protect our companies about cyber. It's high on the agenda in every company today, and it's the same for us as well. My cybersecurity manager will be presenting later today, so I will not have my biggest focus on the cybersecurity side in this session. So we have chosen 3 different focus areas in being able to communicate what we are doing, because that's not always easy within the IT department. So what we're trying to do is think about simplicity, because at the end of the day, our biggest job is to keep things working, but also provoke that feeling of accessibility and that it actually is working for our employees and working for the crew on our vessels. So we are looking into the operational side of what we do, and we want to be as efficient as possible. So this is where our cloud strategy comes in. It's the digital strategy to do things faster. And it's about having an IT operation that can take down the overhead we use on our support services and actually provide more time to what the businesses want us to focus on. So I will get into that. The other one is easy to connect. And we are talking, of course, about a data management platform where we want to transform all internal and external data and transform it into something insightful that actually can be in use for our businesses. We also talk about connecting sea and shore when we talk about easy to connect, so we can mind that existing gap that we have today when it comes to collaborating between shore and the vessels. And of course, with safe to use, we talk about utilizing AI solution to strengthen the security we have in our IT environments today. And we also have a big focus on training when it comes to our employees at sea and shore, to actually being able to bring in a culture where we talk about cyber hygiene as the same way we talk about safety, which is a backbone thing in our business. So very easy and high level. We went into a cloud-first strategy because we have a lot of different infrastructure. We have probably a lot of the same headaches as most companies have today. So we thought about, okay, are we going to try to build backwards in modernizing what we have, or do we want to just sort of have a clean slate and go into the future? And that is what we chose, because what we see with the way we are working is that very often we need to turn down initiatives because the infrastructure is not fit for purpose. So when we talk about infrastructure in the businesses, this is the hard side of my work, because it's complicated, it's very complex, and it's also difficult to talk about. So we rather have a focus on scalability and having a dynamic environment where we can do things faster, and that we have an architecture that we can do things faster in. So being responsible for 3 different companies and 65 vessels, we also need to be prepared that there will be different needs, and we are in a place where we need to handle that. And of course, we wanted to remove all the dependency as we have to the underlying legacy solutions of today. So we are really working hard on this. So when we say cloud first, that's because we cannot say cloud only, and that is mainly due to our vessels, because the vessels and connectivity is always giving us extra challenges. But it does also mean that we are trying to bring in the perspective we have on the shore side, where we can run much faster and then fix the shore side. And then on the second view is, okay, let's bring in the fleet into the same view as we have when it comes to the offices today. So we are trying to thinking about a vessel not as that special, because when we do that all the time, we also have a tendency to complicate and make it more difficult to bridge that gap we have between sea and shore. So what we are trying to do is just build one harmonized cloud for our IT environment where we have control, where we can share easily, but we can also shut things down if it's necessary. So at this point, we have all our companies in the same one Microsoft tenant, as we have been calling World Harbor. And the next step for us is actually to bring in the vessels into the same tenant, because then we can operate and share information and build and design in a completely different way than we have been able to doing up until now. So cloud computing is also giving us, it also gives us a possibility to take down the costs, of course. What we've seen where we've started to do this work, when we are moving a lot of old infrastructure, service to the cloud applications, is giving us also the knowledge of having really expensive equipment out there that are not in use anymore. So we are shutting things down and we are actually saving costs. And we are also paying for what we actually are using. So of course, cloud services is not cheap, but it is a much easier way to spend the money on something we actually need in having extra duplicated environments that we do not use. In addition, we have been going to infrastructure as a code. So everyone knows that when you're working with infrastructure, back in the days, we needed to get the server, and then weeks went by before we actually could provide it to you. So today, now that we are having our infrastructure as a code, it actually means that we digitize the infrastructure. So now when we have requests when it comes to these kind of equipments, we can actually give it out in minutes and not days. And that, of course, is raising our efficiency enormously within our IT operation. And it also keeps our employees much more happy because we can do things faster and give them speed at the same time. In addition, when we are talking about the infrastructure and building everything into one cloud, one environment, of course, having the same thought when it comes to the data has been crucial for us. So we have been using the same technology here, which is also built on the technology of Microsoft Stack. And we have been building a data platform. And of course, the long view for us is having the prediction that comes with data, and also be able to provide machine learning, which is necessary for this kind of prediction. So we have been building one data platform for the companies where we can actually harvest all the data we have in our companies, design, transform, and give it out again, so it actually can be used much more efficient in the business. Up until now, this has mainly been done on the shore side, because it's easier to get out there and it's much more easy for us to do due to the non-challenges with connectivity. But now we will start to look into how we will provide these also for the vessels. We can also see at this point that we need to think a bit different when it comes to using dashboards on board, because we need to be more specific and more cleaner when we provide information, so that it can be read and that it can be used at the time when they need it. Of course, this gives us also challenges when we do this. It's complex. So what we have today is actually duplicated environments before we can get everything into one. So that gives us, for a time, more IT operations than when we are through this. It's also about upscaling our competence. Competence in IT, going from traditional infrastructure into this way of working digital infrastructure, is also demanding for competence, because we are moving towards a little bit of the thinking in how developers actually are working. And of course, it comes to our companies of actually being able to utilize the services that comes with all these technologies. And they also need to up their skill, their competence when it comes to being more digital, and also not keep using the old solutions from the past. And then, of course, we have the balancing between our operations and our projects. What the cloud also can give us when we have everything in one place is when COVID hit us back in early 2020, we were lucky to be ready for this, because we had already created World Harbor and everyone could go home, log in and start working as if they were in the office. So this was really, really important for us. In that way, we were already preparing for the new hybrid ways of working. So within my department today, we actually need to consider, how are we going to provide our services in a secure, easy, and fast way for all employees when they can work from everywhere? So being in a global company, of course, we have been thinking about this in the past, but we also saw that it gave an extra push into doing this faster. So now we are device managing from World Harbor, so that we actually can send out laptops wherever you are in the world, or you can go and buy one from a store, and we can provide the necessary programs you need when you need it from the location that we are at. So this is a leaner, greener way of doing it. And of course, recycling and sustainable solutions regarding equipment and mobile phones are also into this kind of strategy. We have increased control. So we can also see that this is, well, not always a positive for everyone in the organizations, because we're shutting down administration rights. The main reason for us to do so is to, again, have control in the environment, so we know what's going on. We have control of all equipment that we are using and how often we need to change it. It's also easier for us to plan when we do changes that will affect our users. But of course, this is also about security. When everyone went home to our home office, we also saw that it gave us a bit of a new challenges when it comes to what our employees are able to do on their laptops. Because the laptops now is just not a work equipment anymore. It's everything equipment that used for everything, also private. So we've needed to go in and actually shut down all administration rights so we can control the environment. And that may be troublesome for some, but we also see it as a necessity in the way we are working today. And again, when we are doing this one way for all the companies that we are providing our services for, of course, it makes the IT operation more efficient because we can do it easier. We have a one way to operate and we have one way to communicate it. So for us, this is a good thing. The challenge, of course, is that we treat everyone the same way. So back in the past, people usually come through our desk or just stop by and we would do things for you as a service if you were the one that were close to us. But to now we are not doing that anymore. So everyone is treated as equally. And that can also be a challenge. Training is even more required for this because when you're an employee that needs to be self-served at some point, if you're working from wherever you are, it also means that you have to have competence. And of course, we are talking about automating our services all the time to be more efficient. And that is also a challenge when it comes to talking about job security. So the other stuff that I've, of course, talked about when it comes to connectivity is the data. And with a decarbonization perspective, sustainability, ESG and measuring coming in now, that is really going to hit us hard. This is the solution for the future for us being able to handle it. So it's very good to know that we have the right technology already in place. That doesn't mean that it's done or completed. It just means that on the infrastructure side, the technology is ready. So being able to have all this data and provide the same services at the vessels as we now do at shore, of course, we need to think a bit differently. So we have problems, we have projects with some captains where we have discussions on what do you actually need and what kind of glasses do we need to have on when we talk about, for example, providing BI reporting solutions towards the vessels. The needs are different. And probably we also need to think about a little bit differently about design. The good thing for us is that we are already giving a lot of Power BI dashboard out to our business. And we see that this kind of interfaces provides a completely different way of communicating and sharing information. Since this is one data platform, it means that we can share this information across all the companies that we are responsible for. It also means that we can take data from all the vessels and we can translate and transform and design the necessary solutions on top of that and provide the information where it's needed. Because we have this internally, we are also controlling it. So that means that we can segregate the information. Not all information is supposed to be shared. So that is also something that we always need to have a very high focus on. The next level for us when we talk about data, of course, we have come a far way on shore when you compare it to the vessels. So in being able to have this connectivity, we also, of course, are looking towards the VSAT and communication side of how this speed will come up so we can utilize the information that's on board much more than we can do today. But we are at least ready for it. So 2022, I think, will be the first year where we actually are really starting to look into this because of the high focus we now have on decarb, sustainability, and ESG. The next step on the shore side is, of course, to provide this information differently. So we are thinking a little bit like Google does. We already have hundreds of Power BI dashboards. So if you look into the future, how many dashboards is this going to be? So what we have done so far is starting to create a search function on top of the company's data so that people can search for the information they need instead of going to hundreds of different dashboards to find it. And of course, that will also be a competence raise for all of us because it's a very different way of working. So the training we see on this is crucial. And then when it comes to the vessel side as well, we also need to connect this into what do they need and how to train them. So I think that when it comes to search functionality and when we talk about data and transforming data, that will probably come on shore side before we come and bring it out to the vessels. But of course, it's a mindset we also are talking about there. So what we actually do when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to cloud, when it comes to centralizing all these services, before 2006, it was difficult. So 2006 was the year where cloud actually exploded. It's a big difference working in IT now, because in the past, we provided the necessary services, the necessary infrastructure, and then the business took over. Today, this is a continuous relationship between the two. So instead of running clean IT projects, today we run change programs instead. So everything we've been providing for the last 3 years has had a challenge and a change in the way we actually are working in our companies. Providing dashboards, providing search functions, providing one collaborative environment with Microsoft technology as we do today, so that everyone can cross-collaborate if they want to, is of course bringing speed into our operations. And we are just in the beginning of it. So that was what I had today. So thank you for your attention, and I will take your question if there's any to take. Thank you.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I guess we'll have the questions at the end, but there must be a lot of people in the audience wondering how on earth you connect this cloud infrastructure on the shore with what the ships have. But maybe
that's the difficult part.
Yeah, sounds like it. But we'll get into that later. So I'd now like to invite Leif to give his talk. Leif is a digitalization manager with Utklund, which has 22 chemical tankers ranging from 6,000 to 20,000 deadweight tons, and he formerly worked at Odfjell Tankers for 13 years in energy management and competency development, and he's got a bachelor's degree in shipping operations from Southampton Solent University and a master of management with focus on organizational psychology. Wow, that's what this digital world often really needs, isn't it? So I'd like to invite Leif to give the talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, today I'll be talking about how Utkill has approached data harvesting of IT and OT data. A little bit about our digitalization journey, really, and how we're looking at the future when it comes to getting value from these data. A quick introduction about Utkill is on the agenda, who we are, and then I will focus on digitalization, and I'll end up sum up what I talked about. So we are a chemical carrier company located in Bergen. We have offices in Riga and Manila. Approximately 50 people ashore, and approximately 500 seafarers, and we're operating in the North Europe area. We are fully integrated, so Utkill is operating. We have a chartering, a crewing department, and technical management, and all these things are supported by the IT department in Utkill. Look, this is our fleet. It's, as was said, ranging between 20,000 and 4,000 or 5,000 deadweight ton. And if you look at this, you will see that the age gap is quite large. We are modernizing our fleet, but of course, when it comes to getting data from old vessels, a little bit more of a difficulty than getting data from newer vessels. New builds today will be completely different when it comes to integrating IT and OT systems than on the old vessels. So there are different automation systems on board, and the data that we get aren't uniform, which is a challenge. The IT department in Utkill is rather small. It's just the two of us. If you look at the scrolls down there, it's me and we have a support specialist who are supporting the vessels. And my role as a digitalization manager is almost like an orchestra. I'm responsible for the ITC policy, strategy, and ICT leadership, security, and all the projects that we're running. And we're running quite a lot of projects, even for such a small organization. But of course, in order for us to be able to support the vessels and the organization in the way we need, it's important with good partners. So we have different partners for assisting us with the vessel support, infrastructure, both on the shore and on the vessels, communication, database management, and we also have quite good partners when it comes to development. Kirsten talked about Power BI, and we're also using Microsoft 365, and Power BI is development is one of the main digitalization projects that we're running. My role is also being ICT advisory for the senior management, and it's quite important that Utkill understands that ICT needs to be in the know. We need to know what plans are, how the organization is thinking about moving forward in order to support as good as possible. When it comes to digitalization in Utkill, it's been separated into the shore side and the ship side, really, or can be separated. Myself, I started in Utkill in 2019, late 2019. And when I started, Excel was the most used tool as a multi-tool, which is quite common, I guess, and we're still using quite a lot of Excel, but we started quite quickly to organize and streamline the different data that we have from different systems. And one of the things that we realized was that the data quality was quite an issue, mostly because we had quite a lot of legacy systems. So in 2020, we started defining our own strategy, and we have also the cloud first strategy. So everything we're looking at now is, we're always looking, can we put it in the cloud first? It saves us support, it creates efficiency, and by using Microsoft Azure, we're currently looking into that and have started the cloud Azure journey. And I think within a few years we will be able to completely remove the old data centers that we are currently using, and then be 100% cloud based. Power BI was one of the first things we started looking into, because in order to understand where you're going and how to get there, you need to understand where you are. So getting a good overview of the organization by being able to analyze real time instead of always being behind has been quite important for as a first step. So today we have this cloud reporting database where all the office systems are, we're extracting data from all the office systems, and based on that we're creating the reports that are needed for analysis and decision making. In 2020, we were suddenly sent home by the virus, as most of the world was, and we started using Microsoft Teams as a collaboration platform much more than we did. And today, it's one of the main platforms. And being able to communicate, as was said in the talk earlier, to have the infrastructure almost ready when it comes to communication. When people are in a home office, working from wherever, we really use that technology. And I think the virus couldn't have come. If the virus had come earlier, it would be much more difficult for most companies. What we also realized was that we need to update the systems we have. We need to move forward with new modern technology, and we have to improve the vessel communication. We are operating in the north of Europe. The voyages of Utkiel are maybe 2, 3, 4 days, and we're often very close to the coast. So we have an advantage in being on 4G coverage pretty much most of the time, meaning that we have a completely different aspect when it comes to the amount of data that we can send to and from the vessels, when it comes to cost and efficiency, if compared to using satellite. It's been quite difficult to get to where we are now. Most of the digitalization process in the first year was actually structuring, building up this reporting database or data lake, which it really is, ensuring that the quality of the information that we get are good enough, and we've come quite a long way. And today we are in a process that we are focusing on the collection of data from the vessels. As I mentioned, we have different performance systems and automation systems on the different vessels. And the way we could analyze the data until today would be to log into the different vendors' cloud solutions and look at our own data. But looking at part of the fleet in one dashboard and part of the fleet in a different dashboard and the information being presented are not exactly the same, it makes it quite easy to have a fleet overview. So by getting control over the data flow from the vessels, we will be able to have a better overview and understanding of our own of what goes on the vessels and performance of the vessels, and we can start comparing the entire fleet. The way it works today, as most of you know, is that the data flow from the performance systems, the engine manufacturers, are very often completely isolated. And the data is ours. We own the data, and we should be able to have some kind of control of it, on the flow of it. Today, we're quite dependent on the vendors. And as I said, we need to enter their portal in order to consume our own data. So what we're looking at now is, and we're in the middle of have this project. If you look at the illustrations on the bottom of this slide, we're putting what I would call the data manifold, really, data bridge, where all the data from the different onboard operational systems are flowing through, so we can control who it goes to. We can still use the same vendors, vessel performance systems, and send the data to them. We can also aggregate, enhance the quality of the data, and control who gets it. The system that we're looking at is and using now is something called Neuron. It's a data flow platform, and this is a schematics of how this system works. It can take pretty much any format, so it doesn't really matter if we put it on an old vessel or a more modern vessel with a more modern IT solutions and OT solutions. It takes sensors, information from the process systems. It takes manual input in different kind of forms, and it's being sent to this software basically, and which will clean the data, collect the data, aggregate it, and send minute averages, for instance, instead of sending real time. I mean, it can send as many data streams as we want. Looking at this one, this illustrates how it works with a third-party performance vendor. Here you see that it will be sending data to the onboard database, and which is independent of UtKill. It will communicate with the onshore database, replicated here every 5 minutes, which ensures that the vessel can have the same visualization and alarms and analytic systems on board that we see from the vendor ashore. But we can also send it, if you look at the red boxes, the UtKill data stream. We can choose which data to send directly to our cloud solutions. And then from there, we can include that and integrate it into the cloud reporting database system that we have, which means that we can get a much better overview of what goes on. We can enrich our reports. We can start looking at data mining. We can even send the full data set to a third-party vendor for analysis if we wish. So it provides us with a much better ability and control to over our own information. It will also limit the amount of information that we need to send, because we can do some processing on board, which will and then send the information that we need. You don't need real-time data on everything, but sometimes you do, and we can streamline this quite easily with the system. This is a schematics of how the IT systems on board of our vessels are built up. We have this crew network completely isolated, and we have the administration local area network. And now, by combining the sensor information, we get everything through this data bridge, and have a much, as I said, a much better control. It also ensures that whatever comes in, we have a uniform information getting out. So we won't have the situation where we have to manipulate the data stream and the reception ashore, because it's being done here. So we can, as I said earlier, compare apples to apples and ships to ships, and not look at the different vendors' way of manipulating the data before we see it. So we know what we're looking at now. This is also a visualization of how a conceptualized visualization of how this data flow will be. So the data stream from the vessels will be similar for all the vessels. The communication in the cloud between the reception and our reporting system will ensure that we can, in any part of this stream, control the information. We're also sitting on this quite close on the sideline of a project where they're looking at an international project, looking at creating a uniform communication standard of data to and from the vessels. And we're paying quite close attention to it, and we really enjoy being part of it, and having a uniform standard on the format of information that is being used either by vessel traffic centers, by the terminals and harbors, by the authorities, and by the commercial actors, and also on the OT equipment being put on board, because things are being developed, and having a uniform standard would mean that in the future we will have a plug and play capability. It's easy to change flow meters. It's easy to change different equipment, because we are removing us from being too vendor dependent, which puts us in control of the systems on board and also in the information. And it will also put a more commercial pressure on the vendors, because today when you have a system, it's quite heavy investment, and it's also quite heavy investment to change. So very often it's easier to keep what you have instead of using something which is newer and better. The last thing I'd like to say is that when it comes to our digitalization process, data quality and the structure that we started with was the main obstacle to getting real value from what we have. And it takes quite a lot of time creating that structure that you need in order to get what you want. And more modern systems will increase the quality of the information that are being put in, and also the information that are being put out. When it comes to getting data from the vessels, it was the availability that was a problem, because logging into a cloud solution to get performance data is not the same as getting the raw data from the vessels. So this onboard data bridge, it will allow us for controlling the entire stream of information from the vessels. It makes us more vendor independent, and it will enable us a richer data set by combining real-time IT and OT data. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, well, thank you very much. That's brilliant. So I'd like to welcome Christian back in again, and we've got about 15 minutes for questions. I can see that there's a few in there. I mean, one I thought to just to warm up with, it seems like cloud and control are kind of opposite each other. So as soon as you're using cloud, you're kind of using a vendor's system nearly always. And if you want to control the data, then the last thing you want is be beholden to a vendor. They can change functionality whenever they want, and there's nothing you can do. I don't know if that's a nice, easy warm-up question. Do you want to have any thoughts on that, Christian, maybe?
Well, thank you. I can try. No, I would not say that they are opposite. Whatever solution you use, it will be, vendors will be included. And the cloud is not one system. So what we are doing is, of course, when we are leaning to Microsoft, we're leaning to a global vendor on the technology stack, but we are the ones that have this internally with our own people building it. So when Leif is talking about control, we are talking about the same control.
You're building the cloud yourself. That's a
no, not building the cloud, but the technology that we use in the cloud solutions are the ones that we are responsible for. So we have the same control of the data. We are the ones that will have, if we want to share it, because we also see this sort of as an ecosystem. At some point today, you need to rely and lean on other business partners to work with to make this work in a bigger sense. So we will have the specialities on the internal. We will own our own data on behalf of the companies that we're working for. But then we also collaborate with external business partner to make these happen.
Oh, sorry. Leif, there's three questions addressed to you here on the Q&A, so maybe I'll just sort of summarize them. So Sila from LibraStream, which I looked up, is a cloud-based work management software thing, which is asking, or he or she is asking, are you integrating digital work instructions with the cloud? I'm not quite sure what that means. Next question about the bandwidth and connectivity offshore. I guess I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. And then another question: Armand is general manager of a port agency, global generation services in Congo. Could you clarify the challenges of how you balance between data quality and the legacy system? It's kind of a lot of different questions. It might be quite hard to answer, but maybe whatever thoughts come into your mind first with all those questions.
Well, yes, we are integrating digital work instructions with the cloud. As I said, we are lucky enough to have 4G coverage in our fleet most of the time. So we're not too dependent on sending data through the satellite, which is slow and limited. So we have started using small videos, for instance, in order as work instructions in the systems. We're using Microsoft Teams with the fleet meetings today. So instead of sending instructions back and forth through email, you will have a much more real-time collaboration. And that will only increase as the ability to send more data and increased bandwidth will increase. So yes, we are lucky enough to be able to do that, and it's not easy for the seagoing vessels that are using satellite because it has its limitations. As I said, answering the second question, we have quite a large bandwidth, so we don't have the challenges there as most seagoing far seagoing vessels have. Clarify the challenge balance between data quality and legacy systems. Yes, the systems today, it's easy to have field validations, for instance, in the systems today. By combining data, the vessels are reporting noon report, for instance. You can either take that information from the manual noon report, or you can get it from the GPS. So by combining the different data sources and picking the right data point from the different systems, you are eliminating a lot of the manual input and the amount of work that they have on board. But today you still have to have some of these. You need to fill in this form because this system requires that particular thing. Modern systems today will have modern APIs, which means that you can extract it and you can control it in a different way. So everything has to be in a holistic approach. You need to look at everything as one system. And that has not been the way before, because then you would have operation system here, performance system there, and they will be more or less isolated.
Okay, so we've got a question from Tom Haggisather. He's from Odfjell. I don't know if he's a former colleague of yours. He's asking, have you scaled your solution to get data from all the vessels in your fleet? And George Kyriakakis, I've looked up his LinkedIn page. He's the CISO of a shipping company, and like a good cybersecurity manager, he doesn't say what company he works for on his LinkedIn page, but he's asking which data plans have you selected for your fleet? I don't know, Kristin, you'd like to make any comments on these questions?
Can you repeat the first one, please?
Oh, well, it's actually for Lee specifically. I think he's asking, are you
Lee.
getting data from all the vessels in your fleet? I don't know if that's a
commercially
sensitive question, is it, from a competitor?
Well, it's we are in a process. So as of now, we don't have the entire fleet, but we are in that process.
Well, do you want to answer about what data plans you have? So I guess that's for over the SATCOM, I suppose he's thinking of. I think it's a.
Is that for me?
If you'd like to, yes. Or, oh, you're using 4G, you said already, didn't you?
Yeah.
All you can eat, I expect this.
Well, we have approximately 300-400 gigabytes a month on each vessel, which is quite a lot.
Can't do that within Marcelo. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, Christian, any thoughts about your data plans? And also Armand in Congo is also asking about port agencies and digital technology. Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, first a comment on the first when it comes to the data, because it's like Leif is saying on the holistic approach about it, right? So we have one when it comes to how we treat data at the sea. It's important to remember that real time on the vessels is not the same as real time on shore. The demands are completely different. So that means that we can also set up these services quite differently, because real time can be a day, right, on some of these information. It's also about pulling the right information from whatever system that you have the possibility to connect to, which also where the port can come in and make this an easy operation. So this is where we need to think a bit differently about it, because everything's possible. The question is how you set it up and what information you want to take in and when. When it comes to the ports, yeah, that's a big one. We're working with actually with Maritime here in Bergen to look more into this. Also talking with other shipping companies actually into how do we see the modernization of what we can share outside also the companies to work together to improve the efficiency in the port. So of course we have been thinking about it, but do I have a solution for this today? No. At this point, we are thinking more about what information do we have that we can, for example, share with our agents that comes from all the vessels, and we can do it one way through portals, for example, so they can access it easily. So that's the level that we are at this point, but of course we are thinking about what we can do with the ports in the future.
Well, that's great. And the question is from Anton. So Anton's with iGauge in Paris, which sort of does sensor data, but he's asking about the relationship with equipment manufacturers. I think Leif, you've actually answered this. I don't know, maybe we'll ask Christian to. You didn't mention anything about challenges with vendor data as Leif did. You must have the same challenges. Do you want to?
Yeah, and I think it's coming from the IT side and not the OT side. We are scratching the surface when it comes to OT, because the vessels we have is in different classes. So some of the question we are asking, okay, running with modernization of what information we want to extract, are we going to do that for the whole fleet, or do we need to go with the youngest one to actually being able to utilize this when it comes to equipment on board? So we're actually now discussing on how to move closer into the OT environment, because today, no, I have very little connection to the vendors on the OT side, actually. I think that's the tradition. IT and OT has been working very separately up until now, but I think it's very necessary of moving forward. And especially when we're opening up for data, cybersecurity will come in, and we need to go hand in hand IT, OT, and being able to manage it.
Oh, that's great. Sebastian Shervin. So this is the Neuron. I guess he works for the Neuron company you mentioned. Is that the? So I guess we'll just leave that there. If anybody wants to contact Neuron Solutions, a little plug there that are following up with what Leif said. And yeah, well, it's all fascinating stuff, isn't it? It's all very new. Just as last question, Christian, we're coming on this cloud infrastructure connecting with the ship. I suppose we associate cloud with lots and lots of bandwidth, but it doesn't necessarily mean lots of bandwidth. Could mean lower data. Do you have any thoughts for the last couple of minutes on how?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it comes to this, what we see is that when we bring in the thoughts from the shore side, we meet different challenges when we talk to the vessels, but we want to run it out from the same environment, because it will be easier to connect everything that needs to be connected on the system side between the vessels and the offices, actually. So at this point, we are actually talking about how we can run and throw out the application as we have automate the application rollout to the vessels, which we haven't been doing one way up until now. And then the next will of course then be how to use the data, because now I'm talking to the owners that's responsible for the vessels, is that they need to they need to be the ones in the driver's seat on what vessels we do this with. But now we will include Teams. So that's the first on the bandwidth we have today, because that's the easy one. But in the long run, we also want to include the whole Microsoft 365 environment with SharePoint, so we can share information easily with the crew on board. And that will, of course, also demand more capacity. But we're in a lucky place where we're going out for new VSAT contract this year. So hopefully this will change.
Wow,
Crossing my fingers.
Yeah, yeah. And another question, George Kyriakakis asking about ISO 27001, which Google tells me is information security management. If we go back to life, is that something that's relevant to you? Have you thought about these? No, there's another one about ship-shore data, but that's a different standard, isn't it? I think I don't know.
Yeah, we're looking at it into it, but when it comes to security, we're following the IMO regulations at the moment. But I could quickly answer the question about the OEMs, because yes, initially it is a challenge. They initially, because the manufacturers will very often, they don't understand why you need that information, because they are providing it to you. But we're not in a competition with them. We're not removing anything. We're enriching it, and as Christian said, we're collaborating, we're sharing information. It's easier for us to share more information and the specific information that is required. So normally it's not a problem when you explain to them why and what you're doing, because they see that they also get a value from it. So, but initially, yeah, that you need to explain and cooperate with them. Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're coming to the end of the session now. So thanks very much, both of you. I think that's fantastic, opening a whole new ground that we've never heard before. And hopefully we'll see everyone in the audience back again in half an hour for cybersecurity in ESG. So that'll start about 30 minutes from now, and I'll pass back to Vida. Thank you.
Yes, so please use a new login to the second session, and we'll see you in 30 minutes, and we'll have speakers, Agnes from GoToOcean and Kristen from Ankerry. We'll see you tuning in very shortly. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.